Welcome to TruPowur, home of the most powerful marketing tools, training, and technology on planet Earth. Get ready to earn, enjoy, and experience more than you ever dreamed was possible. If you're tired of just getting by and ready to really thrive, then buckle in and listen up. Here's your host, Matt Fox.
Hello, and welcome this fine day. Today on TruPowur Academy, we are going to be talking about getting back to basics. So what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes it's a little challenging for me to try and determine what we should be talking about. So I look at the support tickets and see what kind of things people are dealing with. And so I want to point out some areas that I think that are going to make it a whole lot easier for you when you're dealing with customers and the platform. So without any further ado, let me share my screen and let's jump right into it. So here we are at the quick launch menu, and the first thing that I want to tackle is the CRM. So if we open up the CRM, so one of the things that I see people have a tendency to do in attacking going into their leads is by coming down towards the bottom and then selecting a lead from there, calling it, and then coming back and then going back and forth. And this is really not the way to go about it. So the best way to attack your leads is to come up here into the lead section, just click on leads. And that is going to open up all of the leads that you have. So if you look at over here in this section where it says filter leads, you'll see that everything is set to all. So right now, what I'm looking at is everything that I have in my database, right? So I need to narrow that down. And so if I know I have some Illinois leads, then what I want to do is actually come over here to where it says lead source and select it from there. Now, if I come down here and say campaign and I want to just talk to commercial and I hit update, it is going to narrow it down, but I'm still looking at everything. So if I've got Illinois, Texas, California, Massachusetts, I'm going to see all of it. So I want to narrow it down to a specific location or state. So I'm going to leave that to all and then go into my lead source. And then if I have, for example, Illinois, then I'm going to come in here, hit update. So now I know that everything here is just Illinois. So when I click that open, all I need to do is just click the top lead, and that's going to open up the entire database just for Illinois. Now you can see that I've got one of 500. So once we're making the calls, then we need to resolve that call. So let's say, for example, this first call, when I make the call, all you need to do is click that little green button, and that's all it takes to make that call. Once the call is done, let's say that, for example, that nobody answered, I left a voicemail drop, or maybe there wasn't a way to do that. First call, no answer, try again type of a situation. And so what you need to do when you call somebody, so when you hang up, there is a call outcome here. So if I put no answer, all that is going to do is put that in the notes. That's not going to resolve the call. All that does is just, you don't need to use that. You can use that. Just kind of gives you a good idea as to what the outcome was. But what you need to do is change the status of that lead. And so you need to come down in here, say calling, prospecting, first call, no answer, try again. So once I do that and click save, then I can go on to the next call. And so the next time I come into my database, that is going to actually reduce that by one. And then there'll be another category with all of the first calls, no answer, try again, all grouped together. So if this one happened to be a first voicemail drop, and I click save, and then I go to the next one. As I'm progressing and going through my database, I'm slowly but surely removing those businesses or customer contacts from the fresh lead system, so that tomorrow, when I come into my database and I click on leads, I'm not going to have to try and sort through where I left off. All I need to do is come up here, because you can see now that those two that I just put in there were put in no answer and another one in here. So they are in their own category now. So you can see that this dropped by 2. So all I need to do is select that, click the top one. That is going to open up the entire database. And so now when you look at it, you're going to see 1 of 498. So that's going to keep you from having to go and click through, try to find out where you left off, or repeating a lot of the same things over and over and over again. So again, if this one ended up being, first call, voicemail drop type of a situation, then I'm going to click save and then move on to the next deal. So hopefully that helps you really break that up so that it makes your job a whole lot easier, and being able to keep track of who is at what state. And so maybe on Friday, or you pick a day where you're going to go back and you're going to go through those. But for now, we just want to focus on getting through all of those fresh leads and getting all of the business that we can first round, right? The other thing is talking to people. You will never see me, at least, write or present a script or an outline or a guide where I have where I ask for the individual. In other words, I really don't care whose name is on here. We have a lot of data in the database, and that gets updated to the tune of about 24 to 26 million customer records per year. But with a database with a little over 300 million customer records, some of these could be 4, 5, 6 years old. And so, do we know that Luann still works here? Maybe she got promoted, maybe she got fired, maybe she moved to a new division. There's a lot of things that could happen with Luann. But so when we make the call, we absolutely do not know what the status of Luann is. We do know that they have electric. If they answered the phone, they have electric, right? And so what we want to do is really focus on how you are getting past the gatekeeper and how you can kind of work that so that it works to your best benefit. So now we're typically opening with the utility audit, which is a much softer, friendlier, easier approach. I personally use the open from the commercial outline. And so again, you'll see good morning, good afternoon, and it's either, my name is, if it's not a gatekeeper, then I'm going right into, yes, my name is Matt Fox with TruPowur and the State Energy Choice Program, typically of wherever I'm calling. So if it's Illinois, it's going to be the State Energy Choice Program of Illinois, and so forth. So then I'm making that introduction. But if it's a gatekeeper, how do you get past the gatekeeper? Because I see a lot of people that are asking to ask for Luann and now you've got to have this long discussion. If Luann is no longer there, or if Luann is the owner of the company, that gatekeeper is really paid to try and keep everybody as much as possible that they don't initially recognize away from the owner. So how do you get past the gatekeeper? Well, number one, we want to make sure that we can get to somebody that is going to be able to get the bill to us, right? And so who pays the bills in a company is going to be accounts payable. But what do? They write the checks. They're the ones that pay all of the bills. And so if you ask the gatekeeper for accounts payable, they're assuming you're calling to find out where your check is. And so the gatekeeper is going to be, who is this? What's this about? They're going to drill down on you. And even if they do transfer you, 9 times out of 10, it's going to voicemail. Why? Because accounting wants to find out what your problem is before they get on the phone to find out why they didn't get their check out to you or whatever the scenario might be, so that they can get their business together and get their story together before they return your call. So we don't really want to go down that road, right? So the easiest way to do that is to ask the gatekeeper to transfer you to accounts receivable. Accounts receivable is still in the accounting department, but they're typically is done by somebody with lower tenure. They typically don't have check writing ability, but they do have access, and they're not taught to be gatekeepers. So good morning, good afternoon. I recognize that when the phone is being answered, ABC company, how may I direct your call? That's not an owner type response. That's a gatekeeper type of response. So I'm going to say, good morning. Yes, please transfer me to accounts receivable. And then pause. Why am I pausing? Well, if it's a gatekeeper, you're typically going to hear the response, sure, please hold, and then there's a transfer. But if there's a pause, and nothing happens, in other words, it sounds or feels like the gatekeeper is thinking, who should I transfer this to? Maybe it's a company that is not big enough to have its own accounts receivable, or maybe that's all handled by one individual, by a bookkeeper, if it's a much smaller firm. So if they are hesitant in that immediate transfer, then you need to use that pause. Good morning, good afternoon. Could you transfer me to accounts receivable? Pause. Or whoever handles the electric account. Pause. Is that still Luann? So I'm not asking for Luann, but what does that feel like and what does that sound like? It certainly sounds like I've had a conversation with somebody. I'm not saying that I did. That's the only time that you'll ever hear me say or ask for this individual is after this introduction. So good morning, good afternoon. I realize it's a gatekeeper. Would you transfer me to accounts receivable? Pause. I didn't get an immediate transfer. Or whoever handles the electric account. Pause. Is that still Luann? Or is that still John? Or is that still Mary? Whoever it is on that account. Oh no, they retired. Oh, perfect. Who took their place? Bob did. Then you need to update this information because it's going to be in the email process, right? And so Bob, is his last name Santos as well? Oh, no, it's Peterson. Okay. So we're going to update that record. So perfect. Would you mind go ahead and transfer me? Sure. Then now you can get into the reason that you're calling is for the utility audit. I'm looking at your account. I see that either you never have, or at least within the past 5 years, have not had a utility account, where we go backwards up to 4 years, identifying the errors on the account, not only just what's on the bill, but actually buried within the utility, and getting that back as a refund. So, but getting past the gatekeeper and getting to the right person is important, to have those pauses and knowing why you make those pauses, and you can make those changes in your dialogue when you're trying to get to the right person. So I hear people all the time just immediately start pitching the gatekeeper. They don't care. They don't want to hear it. It will do you absolutely zero good. And so once I get past that and I get to either accounts receivable or whoever handles the electric account, let's assume that that was accounts receivable, then perfect. The first thing I'm going to do is remove doubt. How am I going to do that? I don't recall having spoken with you in the past. Are you new there? Doesn't matter what the reply is. Doesn't matter whether they've been there for 5 minutes, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, or 50 years. It does not matter. All you're wanting to do is to get rid of the issue of, do I know you? Who are you? What's this about? And all of that. So it's slightly deflection, but it's also designed so that you can get a read on the individual. Just like when you're playing poker, you watch their emotion, their expressions, the micro moves that they do, so that you know how they're going to respond. I don't recall having spoken with you in the past. Are you new there? Not a problem. The reason for my call is I'm working on a report for the owner of the company and need to ask a couple of quick questions. Can you assist me? And those people are typically going to be far more advantageous to provide value to you in getting you either the information that you need or somebody that can provide that information. So having said that, one of the things that I want to also bring up is, a lot of times, you'll have a response where somebody will say, oh, we're fine. We already have an electric contract. We have somebody that already takes care of that for us. We've already done that. We've already did this or that or the other. It doesn't matter what the objection is. The reality is most of it is probably BS. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, there's only 3 things that can come out of a prospect or a person's mouth. Think about it. What are the 3 things that can come out of somebody's mouth? A statement, a question, or an objection. It's the only 3 things. Try and think of anything that's not a statement, a question, or an objection, right? So when you look at this, what 3 things a prospect can say? Make a statement, ask a question, give you an objection, right? So how do we deal with that? Well, statements do not need a response. Questions, how are they handled? Most people just try and answer the question. No, questions are answered with questions, even if it's as simple as, is that important to you? And then objections are pushbacks, right? They're either walking to you or they're walking away. And so when you're dealing with objections, there's usually one of 2 paths, and depending on the severity of that objection. And so you're typically going to either fall into feel, felt, found, or isolate, handle, and close. And so let me use an example. So a statement would be, the sky is blue. Do you need to respond? No, it's a statement. If you treat it like a question, guess what? You just upgraded it to a problem. So don't respond. You might nod your head. they're not going to hear your brains rattling on the phone, but you might just acknowledge that you heard what they said. But statements do not need a response, right? Questions are answered with a question, even if it's as simple as, is that important to you? Typically, if it's a question, a lot of times I will go around that by just simply saying, that's a great question, and I'll be answering that in just a moment and keep moving on. The objections are the real problems, because that's where people get stumped. And so a statement would be, the sky is blue. The question would be, is it raining in your neighborhood? Well, the question to the question would be, are you coming over today? So an objection would be, I heard that the weatherman said it's going to be raining out, or it's possibly going to be raining out. I can't come over today. So you got to handle that by either feel, felt, found, or isolate, handle, and close. So let's deal with feel, felt, found, because that's the easiest. I understand how you feel. A lot of customers have felt the same way. What they found was, if you bring an umbrella, when you get out of the car, you won't get wet by the time you get to the front door, right? So feel, felt, found. The isolate, handle, and close to an objection is to deal with it more from a severity. And so isolate the objection by repeating the question back in the form of a question that makes the customers respond positively. So here's the objection. I can't come over today because the weatherman said it's going to be a downpour. Isolate. You mean the only reason why you can't come over today is because the weatherman said that it's going to be a downpour? They're going to say yes, because that's exactly what they just said, except you turned it around in the form of a question. But did you catch the little isolation in the beginning? And that was, the only reason why you can't move forward with this contract today, the only reason why you can't do this, that, or the other is, and then repeat their objection back in the form of a question. They're going to say yes. Why do you do that? Well, one, you want to isolate it so that when I deal with this, I don't have to jump through another hoop. So if I'm going to isolate all of those objections down to one thing, the only reason why we can't move forward today is because, so they're going to say yes. Handle. I'll send you an umbrella. And if it's raining when you get out of the car, you won't get wet by the time you get to the front door. Close. Fair enough? Does that make sense? So I hope that makes a lot of sense to you. But there's only three things that can come out of somebody's mouth. So if you have a statement, question, or objection, if you treat a statement like a question, guess what? You just created problems. If you treat a question like an objection, guess what? You just made it worse. So you need to be able to work with a customer at a cadence that allows you to think quick enough in order to go over those things. So I have set up a little PDF here. So let me get my screen back on here. So the three things that a prospect can say, obviously, statements, questions, objections. Statements are general remarks or observations made by the prospect that are not required. They do not require a direct response. Example would be, I've heard a lot of people switching to this type of service, and if there was any response, you don't need a response, but especially where you over explain yourself or reacting unnecessarily. So, just simply a nodding, affirming, yeah, that's a growing popularity type of thing. So statements need no response. I think that when you go into questions, That's always important because people have a tendency to want to just answer questions rather than drilling down on it. So direct inquiries from a prospect seeking clarification or more information. Example, how does that compare to what I already have? To maintain control and gain insight, to ensure that you uncover their real concerns or motivations. That's a great question. Is that important to you? Or that's a great question. What's the most important factor to you and making that switch? Are you looking for short-term profitability, long-term protection? What are the things that are important to you? So I'm always going to come back with a question. And so objections, resistance or concerns that a prospect might have that could prevent the sale. It's too expensive, and those are two primary techniques: is the feel, felt, found. So with feel, felt, found, show empathy, acknowledge their concerns. I understand how you feel. A lot of our customers felt the same way at first, but they also found that our solution actually helps them save money long term. So that's a feel, felt, found. Isolate, handle, and close is step one is to isolate. Repeat the objection back in the form of a question to confirm that it's a real issue. So if price weren't a concern, would this be something you'd move forward with? Handle, overcoming the objection, using a tie down to reinforce the value. The great thing is with saving, you'll get, actually it pays for itself, and wouldn't you agree? So close by asking the question, by asking a buying question to move them forward in the sale. So let's say you get started. Would you prefer short-term savings or long-term protection, or both? So by recognizing and responding appropriately to statements, questions, and objections, you're going to stay in more control over the conversation and lead the prospect forward. So I think it's really important that not only are you a pro at being able to navigate the CRM and being able to result those calls so that you're not doing a lot of work, double work twice, but then also having that ability to reach out to the customer, because that's usually the most uncomfortable part. When you get somebody that's engaged with you, that's easy, right? It's much more difficult to get past the people that don't really care about what you have to say or talk about, or the things that you're trying to take care of. In closing, one of the other things that I would say is that, when you are talking to a customer, a lot of times, they say, well, we have a contract, or we're all set. Well, if we're talking to them about the utility audit, then you need to make sure that they understand that the audit does not renegotiate their electricity contract. The audit is where we go backwards up to 4 years, identifying the errors that are not only on the bill, but actually buried within the utility. And based on the statute of limitations, we're able to get that back as a refund. So when customers have this response, or they respond back to your email, we decided not to move forward, we already have a contract, they were not listening, or you didn't convey that message, because they still think you're trying to switch their electric contract. Now, that's not to say that we won't look at that, but I don't want to talk about that, because that's usually something that is going to give somebody pause or a reason to give you pushback. So we want to take away all of that and just focus on one thing. For example, does your car mow the lawn? No. Does it do the dishes? No. Does it do the laundry? No. The car does not do the laundry. The car does not mow the lawn. The car does not do the dishes. Same thing with the utility audit. The audit does not renegotiate your electricity contract. That's not to say that we won't look at it later, and later maybe sooner, but we need to take that doubt away from the customer, because the primary focus for the call is the utility audit. So once you have the bill in hand, then we will upload it to the auditors, and then we will look at what if benefit we can provide that customer at other levels, whether that be a new electricity or natural gas contract, or bill reduction, or power factor correction, or whatever service would provide value for that customer. If there's no value for the customer, then we're just going to leave it at the audit. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we would not be doing the customer justice in a full scale evaluation if we didn't look at all of the things as part of that audit. So make it clear to the customer that the audit does not renegotiate your electricity contract. You understand that? I'm not here to switch your electric account. I'm here to look at what errors are on the bill and buried within the utility that ultimately result in substantial refunds. For some companies, it can be literally tens of thousands of dollars, and going backwards up to 4 years, identifying those errors is instrumental. Why? If we have $100,000 coming back to you because of those errors, we're going to fix those errors. So that means that if we go backwards up to 4 years and get you $100,000 in refunds or $50,000 in refunds, that means that you're also not going to pay that moving forward. In other words, if we get you $100,000 in refunds and correct those errors going back 4 years, that means going forward, that's going to be $100,000 that you're not going to be spending again for the next 4 years. That's a $200,000 swing. So if you're looking at the profitability of a company, well, if you have a hot dog stand and that hot dog stand costs you far more money than you make, it's not a good business. But if you can find ways where you can buy your hot dogs and buns and ketchup and mustard and onions and relish and a stand and heat it and cook it for far less, then that makes sense. And then your profitability goes up. So if you can add another $200,000 back into your profit margin, that would be a good thing, correct? Yes. So anyways, I know that today was pretty quick. Hopefully you found value in what it is that we went over. A lot of people, I see where they're making errors, and I just want to try and simplify that by going back to the basics so that you understand how to navigate through your leads a little more effectively, how to get past gatekeepers and get to the right people so that you can have an informed and intelligent conversation. And then when you do, make it clear and understandable that we are focusing on the audit so that we can provide them value. So appreciate everybody being on the call today. And like always, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So have fun storming the castle. Bye now.